One thing that I'm particularly concerned about is our debt levels. I mean, if you just take the UK, and we're by no means alone. Somebody said to me this morning, it's a kind of an ugly contest. Now, our debt is best part of £3 trillion, which you would think would be, the governments would go, right, we need to pay this down, because it's like, having a ridiculous mortgage on your house. Very occasionally you might have asked yourself, where does money come from? How do we know that's a pound? And then you go, oh, I don't know, it just is, and you forget about it.
What's the biggest shift you've seen in how people now view money?
I'd never heard the term fiat money, fiat currencies, whatever, before Bitcoin. And when I was at various Bitcoin events and crypto events, they kept talking about fiat money. I was like, what's this fiat? And they said, well, it's pounds. And things. Well, right. And then you realize, oh, it's not really backed by anything. It's really not.
And so you've got the situation now where you've got the East, the West, you've got the rise of potentially like the BRICS currency, and then you've got, okay, the dollar's now back in vogue. And so there's this tug of war going on at the moment. And who's right? Do think about, is my money best in that bank? Do think about the alternatives. Do think about other countries as well, because it's not all UK. And I think
true.
The new money order, which is why we're doing the podcast, is about freedom and mobility. And we've got to fight for that. And I think the UK is quite a way behind, unfortunately, which is why we're in Jersey, because they need this new money order. Hello, welcome, Jasmine Birtles. How are you?
Good, thank you very much. I'm not in Jersey. I am in London, which is cold and windy, but hey, it's still fun.
It's okay out here. We get up a little earlier. We have a little bit of 2 or 3 degrees more, and it just makes things a little bit nicer. But lovely to see you again. And a lot of people will know you already, but many will be the first time seeing you, Jasmine, in my network. So if possible, could you please give me a brief background to your fantastic credentials?
Oh gosh, looking back, you think, it's such a zigzaggy road. I'm a financial journalist, financial author. I'm the author of 38 books. I'm the founder of moneymagpie.com and also the presenter of the Money Magpie Invest podcast. I've been doing all sorts of things in my time, everything from stand-up comedy to hosting Homes Under the Hammer and everything in between. So, pick what you like out of that.
Well, I've always been a fan of your complete outspokenness and honesty in everything that you do and say, which is why you came to the first thought of in my mind when I thought, right, we need to start speaking out here now, because there's very little.
We do.
There's very little honesty being shared among the media, and I have 3 children in their 20s, and things need to be spoken about openly and honestly.
They do.
They do.
I was particularly angry. I mean, I would say I was radicalized by the COVID debacle. Before that, I was kind of establishment woman. As I said, did Homes Under the Hammer, I did BBC, I did all sorts of things. I had columns in various places, the Mail, the Express, the Independent, all sorts. And then with COVID, my eyes were opened, the scales fell off, and I thought, they're all lying. The government's lying. The media is lying. Academia. I went to university. I was the first person in my family to go to university. I was so proud to be there. Not now. I'm so disgusted by academia. There's a lot that we have to speak out against, as you say, for the sake of the 20-year-olds, some of whom are awake, but many of them aren't.
Well, my daughter, interestingly, is now moved over to Jersey. She had great dreams she did Bristol University, wanted to go and have a great new exciting job in the city of London, and was actually interviewed by AI bots. And she's got a wonderful personality that wasn't able to shine through. So the world's gone a bit mad.
That's appalling. Gosh, AI bots. Because I have heard that people, of course, are using AI to write their CVs and their covering letter. And now they're being interviewed by AI. So it's AI interviewing AI. It's ridiculous. Isn't it utterly ridiculous?
It is just nuts. So creativity, passion is very hard to show through when you're just dealing with a robot on the other side. But
Absolutely.
well, let's get into this because we've got lots of things to cover, if that's okay. So
Yeah.
I've actually asked my Gen Z daughter and a couple of others, what do you want to know? What's the burning question for you in your financial future? And one of the first things is like, well, we like to know who we're talking to. And I said, well, I've got this great lady coming on. She loves a bit of comedy, so it shouldn't be too boring like every other bloody podcast on money seems to be. So, what's your first memory of money, whether it be funny or sad?
Oh, that's a good point. My first memory. I think to be honest, it probably is a bit sad because my parents were fairly typical in that you had a spender and a saver. And my dad was very frightened of money, and would sort of silt it away, and wouldn't let us go out for tea and cake, that sort of thing, because he said, "It costs this amount and you can make your own for free at home or only for pennies." And my mum really wanted to go out. So, this has, really inculcated in me a desire to go out for tea and cake, and one of my favorite things to do, my spiritual home, as far as I'm concerned, is a really nice posh hotel lobby, hotel lounge, not the lobby, the lounge, and got nice comfy chairs and nice pot of tea. I don't like coffee, I just don't like the stuff, and probably a cake or a scone, and it might cost 15 quid, but I think, "I don't care. I'm here, I'll spend a few hours here, I'll have my tea and I'll have a refill and I'll have my cake." And that to me is a big thing. So not being allowed to go out for tea and cake is probably my earliest memory, at least the one that I can think of at this moment. But I've made up for it since. Oh yes, I have.
I think everybody likes a little bit of tea and cake. Actually, take me back
Yes.
to Wurzel Gummidge then, actually, with Aunt Sally, with a little bit of cake.
Oh, keeping the cake. Oh, yes,
Uh,
yes.
I think it's an interesting one because when we go back to parents, you very rarely have two parents the same. You normally
Oh,
have one who's
absolutely.
hard to the money and one who's spendthrift. So
Yes, yes. Which in a way is not so bad. I mean, if you've got 2 spendthrift, you just got a hopeless time, and if you're both if you're both sort of hoarding the money, then you're gonna have a pretty miserable time there. So you could do with a bit of a balance, but you need to have connection and you need to have openness and communication and reasonableness. And I mean, I'm not married, but if I were, I would be deciding, which of us is better at the money, and it could be him. If he's better at the money, then I'd say, "All right, you do it," and but we'll talk about it, every month or so. We'll just discuss, just so we both know where we're at, what sort of cash we've got, because I think that's really hard. And certainly this happened with my parents, that my mum had no clue what money we had. And you do need to know, and a lot of problems happen when there isn't the communication. As we're always saying, got to have communication. Easy to say, but it really does have to happen.
And I think that's goes right through from young days. I mean, luckily my kids have grown up among me talking about money and picking up snippets
Mm.
here, there, and everywhere. But they're equally one's loves to spending, one likes to save. So you've
Yeah.
got the different thing. But we used to have the building society coming to us in our primary school. We used to have
Oh, that's good. We
you
didn't.
were younger, yeah. So I'm probably a bit older than you. I don't know, but so we
Probably, that's what I always say.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. If you say, "You're not old enough to remember," I go, "Yes, whatever it is, the Boer War." "Yeah, I'm not old enough to remember the Boer War. You're totally right. I'm only 27, obviously."
Of course you are. But it's funny
Yeah, thank
actually
you.
because I think it was the Cheshire Building Society, and they went bump, in the last crisis,
Oh,
along with many other
yes,
building
that's
societies.
interesting.
Actually, it was really quite sad.
But that was probably, I don't know about the Chester, but it is
Cheshire,
probably
yeah.
because Cheshire, they probably got taken over because so many of these building societies, they got the men in white socks coming in and just taking over and turning them into dodgy, banks and doing all sorts of dodgy things that their forebears would never have allowed. So it is really sad when they lose that fiscal responsibility and just go, "Yeah, let's go for the profit," and, it doesn't last.
We were actually right in the heart of that, Jasmine, because at the time the Cheshire Building Society were buying our mortgage and insurance business to buy the subprime loans that they were buying in the open market.
Yes.
And the FCA rang me over the weekend and said, PwC had been in doing due diligence for 2 weeks, And then they rang and said, we can't get hold of the finance director of the Cheshire Building Society. What's going on? And he'd done a runner.
Yes.
He'd been,
Not
he'd had his hand
surprised.
in the till. So so we literally, the following weekend, I think it was nationwide, bailed out, let's say 10, 20 building societies over the weekend,
Yeah.
because they all
Yeah.
had these questionable loans on the balance sheet from the subprime. Mutuals should never have been buying those things onto the balance sheet.
Absolutely. And now this brings me on to my next theme. If you get me onto my soapbox, I tell you, one thing I didn't mention is that I'm going to be doing a program on Mike Graham's channel. You know Mike Graham from Talk TV. He does things like Plank of the Week, and he got thrown off Talk TV, and he set up his own thing on YouTube called UK Live. And I'm going to do a program on that. And one of the things I'm going to have in my money program is Fine of the Week. Because you know what it's like, all these banks and building societies and financial companies, insurance companies, they're being fined all the time because they're being criminal all the time. And yet, at the same time, and I just had this with a bank that shall possibly remain nameless unless I get cross, they tell us, "Oh, we don't want you as a customer. We don't like you, so don't want you as a customer." And you think, what you are an actual criminal organization. Look at the millions, literally millions and millions that you have been fined by the FCA and other organizations for your criminal activity. And you're saying to me that I'm not good enough for your organization. Well,
But
that's what I say in a very British way. Hmm.
I think as well, some of the times I look at, you're fining mutual shareholders as well. Yes, fine the people themselves who've been inappropriate within the organisations, but not the people who get the mutual divvy every year. When some of these organisations that are mutuals, purely mutuals, get fined, it literally comes out the shareholders' reserves. And
Yes.
yes, fine the actual inappropriate directors, and that's what the senior manager regime is supposed to do, but not the people who have been victims through some of these malpractices. So there does need to be a big look over the way, the naughty stick comes along and whacks people on their wrists. It's
I
all
agree.
wrong.
Well, there again, we go back to COVID. I mean, you've got the vaccine injuries board, so all these sort of people are coming, and there's huge numbers of people complaining about vaccine injuries from the COVID vaccine. Who pays the fines? We do, the taxpayer. So that the very people who are saying, I need to get some compensation for this, it's their taxes that are being used for the fines. Should be the pharmaceutical companies, but oh no, they've been protected. It's just wicked that these big organizations, big money, big pharma, big food, they all get away with it seems.
Well,
Hmm.
I think money rules the world, doesn't it? It's just, it's
Yes.
now different forms of money, which leads us on to the next question, really. And I think, what's the biggest shift you've seen in how people now view money?
Oh, good question. Because there's I would certainly Bitcoin has initiated the biggest shift, because what it did, and it certainly did it to me, was it made us question fiat money. I'd never heard the term fiat money, fiat currencies, whatever, before Bitcoin. And when I was at various Bitcoin events and crypto events, they kept talking about fiat money. It's like, what's this fiat? And they said, well, it's pounds and things. Well, right. And then you realize, oh, it's not really backed by anything. It's really not. It's because it's a sort of existential question you very occasionally might have asked yourself and go, where does money come from? How do we know that that's a pound? And then you go, oh, I don't know, it just is. And you forget about it. And then with Bitcoin, you go, that really isn't actually worth anything. And you look at how much it's been debased, and you realize that a pound now is worth, I mean, barely half a pence from 100 years ago from what it can buy. And then you move on, or if you're me and quite a lot of people, you move on to solid real money like gold and silver, but gold particularly. So I would say for me, it's gone Bitcoin, fiat currencies rubbish, gold, money metals, commodities generally, but keeping a hold of Bitcoin as well. That's the shift that's happened with me. And it's not just a mental shift, it's what's happening in the world. And I am by no means the only one, because we are seeing the death of fiat currencies. And I'm quite grateful that I realized sort of before it really properly happened that this is happening.
I think even I did a paper. I went down the rabbit hole, as they say, in 2017. I wouldn't say I'm a Bitcoin maximalist because there's a lot of lunatics out there, but
Yes.
the solid foundation of the project, call it what you will, the scarcity of money, similar to the old pebbles from the old days or the old necklaces. And
Mm.
I, I
Yeah.
think I think if you I do respect, don't you know, remember Mervyn King, obviously our previous governor of Bank of England.
Mm.
In 1999, he actually predicted that central banks would no longer be required once there was enough computation power. And he said he could see the day when global clearing of monetary settlement would not have to flow through a central bank. And I think
Good.
we're nearly at that stage. And I don't know whether it's going to be
Mm.
a year, 3 years, 5 years, but there has to be something better. And there are enough clever people
Yes.
out there building, and we don't know what it is
Yeah.
yet. But I think we all want something better.
Well, that also brings me back to politics because I think in the same way that we need a democratization of money and taking it away from these central funnels, these awful, awful central banks that have caused so many problems, we also need, I think, direct democracy because the current form of democracy that we have is not democratic. It doesn't work. The idea of having, voting for one member of parliament in your area and expecting them to represent you, it just doesn't, even if the person that you want, in the party that you want, gets elected, they're not going to have the same views on you as you on abortion and assisted dying and immigration and taxation and benefits. It's just not gonna happen. So I personally, I think that we are going to have to move more to the Swiss method of direct democracy, where we, the people, put the effort in and actually have referenda on national subjects, particularly large national subjects, but also local ones as well and regional issues. It's effort, and I know a lot of people going, "Oh, no, I can't be bothered." But if we want democracy, if we want things to work better, I think it's the only way forward, personally.
I think, yeah, I hate the term tribes that people are using, but there seems to be tribes both from their social media, their monetary choice.
Mm.
And you said, I don't want to see this separation,
Separa
separation, it's always
Yeah, separation.
separation, but it seems to be happening naturally. And so we've
Yeah,
got the
yeah.
situation now where you've got the East, the West, you've got the rise of potentially like the BRICS currency, and then you've got,
Mm.
okay, the dollar's now back in vogue. And so there's this tug of war going on at the moment, and
Yeah.
who's right? And I think on big issues, I think health, education, you will get consensus, I think, in most areas. But I think you've probably got to it's got to break first, unfortunately.
Yeah, yes. That's the way it feels to me, honestly, because one thing that I'm particularly concerned about is our debt levels. I mean, if you just take the UK, and we're by no means alone. Somebody said to me this morning, it's a kind of an ugly contest when it comes to, you know, Western democracies, Western economies. But we are particularly bad. 100% of we have debt levels of 100% of GDP. We are spending. With this government, we're spending even more. The last government was spending stupidly. I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why people hated them ultimately, because they weren't conservative. They call themselves conservative, but they weren't behaving that way. And now we've got Labour, particularly pushed by the economically illiterate backbenchers, being telling them to spend, 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 and they're going to spend more. And of course, everybody's going to want them to spend more because, who doesn't want the goodies? And I think the only point at which whoever's in power is going to be allowed to cut, because we have to cut, is when things break. Because that only when whoever's in power, and it doesn't matter what color they are, what political color they are, they they will not be allowed to make the cuts that they need, because we need to make swinging cuts, and they will not be allowed to make those cuts by the voters until they go, see my hands, see my pockets. There is literally no money. We have to decide as a nation where the tiny bits of money that we've got still, will go to. And it's going to happen in the same in France, as we saw. In France, they try and make tiny little cuts, little reasonable cuts, and try and get those through the budget, and the whole government collapses because everyone goes, "No." So, it's just human nature that once you've got the goodies, you do not want to let them go, and you won't until it's made very clear to you that it's literally not there.
Well, it's been really interesting. I've been in Jersey now for 4 or 5 years, and there's no money printer in Jersey. That it's if you look at the Crown dependencies and the overseas territories, they can't dip into the money printing machine. So they literally
That's
have to cut the
interesting.
cloth. And so whilst I think they've announced there's a 100 million deficit this year, which is a lot in comparison to their
Yeah.
economy, as a 5%, they literally have no option but to cut the cloth. So
Yeah.
if you've got access to that honey jar permanently, you're going to keep going into it until it's empty. And I think, but that's consecutive governments, and I don't think until there is
Yes,
a
yes.
fundamental switch to
Yeah.
a new way. And maybe monetary system is the first to break. Maybe the monetary system is the first change maker. You look at what's going on in Argentina and some of these other jurisdictions, and
Yeah.
Venezuela even. So there's all sorts of little test cases going on in a change of monetary policy and approach. But as you say, once the printing machines are going crazy like they're doing in the US and probably in the UK for the next 3 to 5 years, who knows? But I think the rise of the LATAM countries who are adopting, because they had nothing to lose, they're adopting stable coins, they're adopting Bitcoin, they're adopting real world assets and moving them freely between each other. They're plugging into the financial system. And of course, it's a lot easier to rise from a low point. Your likes of your Bulgarias, they're sitting on, I think, what was it, Holly? What was the figure on Bulgaria? It was something ridiculous low debt to GDP. I think it's something like 5 or 6 times superior debt to GDP than the
Yes.
UK.
It's 24%.
Well, that's the scary.
24, yeah. So
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, this is the crazy thing. There's Germany, which I've always grown up with thinking they're the sensible ones, the fiscally responsible, and they did say to themselves, "We're only going to have X amount of debt." Now they've ripped up the rule book. They're taking their foot off the pedal, going, "Yes, we're gonna be borrowing till the cows come home," because of this stupid net zero cult that they're determined to destroy their country with. But at the same time, Poland is going great guns. Poland refuses to have immigration as far, well, much of it anyway. It never gave up on its manufacturing, and it's set to go further than to overtake Germany, and certainly Britain. It's probably overtaken us already. I think, well, in the next couple of years it will. And it does show that when you are honest with your money and honest with the way you behave and run your country, it does ultimately pay dividends. Whereas in this country, we have now our debt is best part of £3 trillion, which you would think would be, the governments would go, right, we need to pay this down, because it's like, having a ridiculous mortgage on your house. At some point, you think, we've just got to stop spending and pay that down. Rachel Reeves got a windfall of 30 million or 30 billion in the last quarter, and I'm sure she'll spend it because that's what her backbenchers are telling her to do. Because if it were me, I'd be like, right, we'll just put all that into the national debt, bring it down, and just every year, every quarter, put a bit more in, bit more in, bit more in. But no, they've got to spend it, and they'll spend it on rubbish.
if a lot of people don't reference that people have sold their assets, that's why the capital gains tax was up. Everyone,
Yes,
exactly.
exactly.
That's the tax they've paid on the money they've taken
Yeah,
elsewhere. So
gone,
gone,
gone.
gone. So you're in this
Yeah.
situation where obviously we get told what people want us to read, but if you look behind the movement of money, and that's what new money is, it's mobile. The wealth of today is mobile, and something in the region of 90% of transitional wealth of the world's most affluent want mobility. They don't want it stuck in a vault with a 2-week appointment to go and see the deeds and things. So you've got a complete mobilized global economy now. And I think this leads especially onto the poor old Gen Z we were talking about earlier. My kids are like, well, that they would love to own a home, but do they just
Mm,
rent?
mm,
Is it worth
yeah,
Gen Z saving
good
to
point.
buy a
Yeah.
house now or just rent? Where would
Yes,
you stand on?
price could come down. Well, I mean, I'm sort of half and half about property because on the one hand, it's a big lump of nuisance or can be, that it never stops costing you something. However, like I was saying earlier, I'm into gold, I'm into silver, I'm increasingly into other commodities and land and physical things and property is a, big lump of physical stuff. And I think going forward, although in Britain and certainly in the central London, it's very much in the doldrums at the moment. I'm not even looking at how much my property is worth. I don't want to know. But going forward, I think it probably will be worth something. So if somebody has the cash now or can get it together, it's probably not a bad time to buy. But that's my assumption here. It could go down further, but I think going forward, anything that you can touch and hold with your hands, do things with, make things with, live in, live on, is probably worth having.
I think, yeah, a lot of it is location. For such a small country, the
Mm.
variables are phenomenal. If you look at
Yeah,
particularly, we very rarely got exposure to the south because we were, I was very active in well, there's been two credit crunches in my career.
yeah.
So, but there's a statistic I read the other day, and I'm not giving Andy Burnham any credit for it or anything, but you've got a situation where I think it was 15 years ago there were only 500 domestic residences in the city of Manchester. It's
Really?
now
500?
yeah, but it's just
Wow.
all the dead mills. There's nobody lived in them,
Of
and
course.
now there's
Yes, yes.
100,000 people.
Good,
So
good. Well,
people are
tremendous.
relocating from London, I think, and staying
Yes.
in the universities. And I think so. You've got
Yeah.
these because if you look at I mean, I tried to do some research on why is there such an imbalance of homes not being acquired in the UK, and it's relative to GDP. The country's in debt. The cost of actually
Yeah.
living means that nobody can
Yeah.
afford to buy a home. It's
No,
just not
no,
affordable for anybody. And when you
no.
lump in student loans for poor 20-year-olds, I was with my daughter and going through it, and I said, "Do you actually compound the unpaid interest?" And yes, it gets added to the
Yeah,
debt.
it's
It's
shocking.
like payday
And I wouldn't
lending.
mind. It's appalling, and they start at the I mean, I assumed that the interest started when you
Yeah.
graduated. No, it starts when you first go I mean, well, what do you it's staggering. As I say, I mean, I was really, proud and pleased to go to university. I thought it was just great, but I didn't have to pay, I got a full grant and I got a scholarship. So, yeah, I was sitting pretty I thought I was poor. I didn't even know I was born. Now I'm saying to people, don't bother, unless it's something like, I don't know, medicine or law where you have to have a degree. I mean, I assume you still have to for those things. Um, just don't go and do an apprenticeship. Go and have a life because it's not worth it, particularly if you're going to go and do media studies or gender studies or some old nonsense like that. I can't tell you the number. I'm sure you do the same number of CVs that go straight in the bin when I see one of those gender studies. Oh, doing film studies, are you? You just stared out the window, dribbling down to your front for 3 years. Yeah, right. So most of these are an absolute waste of money now, particularly if you come out, you go in as a girl and you come out as a boy. A lot of time that's what happens with a lot of these places.
Or a
As I
cat.
told my alma mater. Yeah, or a cat. Yes, exactly, a cat, Like I said, a lot of these stupid things start with academia. I was invited by my college. I went to Christ College at Cambridge, and I was invited to go and talk to the students. And in the past, pre-COVID, I used to go, "Oh yes, right, come." Now I'm like, "No, no, thank you for asking, but no, not until you sort out your trans rights and stuff." And then they go very quiet.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. It's common sense has to come back, and the minority shouldn't be dictating the whole of the world. So I think
Absolutely.
I think that for me, the young people of today have got some big choices to make. That
Yeah.
particularly with pensions and whether pensions are a good thing. Obviously,
Mm.
they're different if you're lucky enough to work in the state or you've got a inflation being pension. But private people who are working in the private sector, where would you suggest they and obviously you're not giving financial advice. Let's clarify that.
No.
But just as a sat down now in, taking you back to your, post grad 22-year-old,
Yes.
what would you be today putting into a pension?
That's a very good point. I'd probably hedge my bets. I would probably put some into a pension, because the problem with pensions is, it's all political. You've no idea what they're gonna do even next year with pensions, let alone in, 40 years' time. So while it's got a nice tax efficient element to it, then I would certainly put some in. But it's the usual advice for any sort of investing is to spread your bets, to diversify your portfolio. So I would definitely put some in there. I'd put some into gold. I would definitely have some Bitcoin. Most 20-year-olds do anyway. I would probably have. I would certainly use an ISA. And that would be stock market investments, stocks and shares investments. I've never had a cash ISA. I don't believe in cash ISAs. I tell other people about them, but I wouldn't use it myself. And I keep saying, don't do it. Put it into stocks and shares or an IF ISA. But that's because they tend to do better. But I would have a spread, definitely. And I would, again, even though our tax regime is ridiculous, I would, again, set up my own business, which is what I did. I've never had a job. Nasty things, jobs. Ugh, no. Always run my own business. And that's what I would always recommend to other people if they think they can manage it. Not everybody can, but yeah, that would be the other thing.
I think one of the challenges, obviously, when you've got a Rachel from accounts not knowing the difference between different ISAs and pulling out one rabbit of the hat one day.
Yeah.
Cash ISAs,
Yeah.
you can have 5,000 cash, then you can have 12,000
Mhm.
cash. Then, you've got
Yeah.
to put it into UK stocks and shares, when everyone's like, well, no, I'll gladly put it in the top 10 US stocks and shares, but not the UK. So you've got
Yeah.
conflicting direction
Yes.
from unfortunately, what comes about, how can I be polite? A less than qualified team
Yes.
on the front benches,
Yes.
dictating the economic direction of the country when they haven't got the experience to be commenting, in my honest opinion.
Oh, absolutely. I think I've got more flip-flops than Primark. And, you look at the people on the front bench and really they should be filling shelves of Tesco's. This is the upsetting part of it. So you've got these people, I mean, seriously, I can't think of a single one of them that you'd think, "Oh, I must, hire that person for my important role." And then they're very weak and they've got the screaming, you know, lunatic backbenchers telling them to spend on anything and everything. It's a recipe for disaster, and I just hope that that disaster happens sooner rather than later because I can't stand this long drawn out destruction of our economy. Continuing destruction of our economy because the last lot did some terrible things as well. So can't just put it all on this regime.
Well, I suppose the interesting thing, which is personal to us and many others, is the debanking and the exclusion, and the people who
Mm.
do know what they're doing economically,
Yes.
business wise, are probably sat, rubbing their hands together on the ability to capitalize on this. And I think the big question that we've been asking ourselves, which is one of the reasons we're in Jersey for a new type of economy, is the people, do you believe they've lost trust in the banks?
Oh, 100%. I mean, that happened in 2008, didn't it, really? And it's never come back. And particularly when you look at it and look at the way that the banks were supported. I mean, in theory, that's how Bitcoin happened. I'm still not sure whether it's a goodie or a baddie, with all the Epstein's involvement and whatever. But from what I can see, the point of Bitcoin was, as a reaction to the banks being given the support of the taxpayer through the government. And they just carried on doing it. And they carried on and carried on, and things have just got worse, not better. Banks have become more and more intrusive. I've just had to fill out a stupid, stupid form yet again for my business account, which took me ages, asking me stupid questions and not allowing me to answer in the way I'd like to answer. And, this is all all part of their KYC. And I'm sure because I have, moneymagpie.com is a financial website. It's a financial information and training website, really. But I'm sure I'll get another call from my bank like I did a couple of years ago saying, Do you deal in Bitcoin? No, we don't. We write about it, but we don't. Do you sell Bitcoin? Do you, and you just think you people pick any bank. They've all been fined for their money laundering, their dodgy dealing, their actual theft, and they have the gall to ask me if I'm dealing with a pretty legitimate cryptocurrency. Well, it's not a cryptocurrency. You have to remember Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's not a cryptocurrency, as my Bitcoin maximalist friends tell me. But anyway, that whether even if I were dealing in Doge or the Trump coin, it's not their business. It really is not their business. They should only care about whether the money's coming in and going out in the right way, rather than who I'm dealing with. I mean, we should have them fill in forms for us. Really, it's like, how much have you been fined by the FCA? What was it for? What level of criminality do you have in your organization? How many of your members have actually been put in jail because of their behavior, etc.? That's the way around it should be done, not asking us all the time to fill in these stupid forms.
I think it's such a legacy of, probably the best way to describe it is anonymity between the walls of power. You look at the numbers, even the likes of the Chagos Island, and just all these huge
Ridiculous.
sums of money coming out of the British taxpayers' hard-earned cash, and we don't know what's happening. Why are these 3, 4, 5 billion pounds being sent to? So there's something going on. There's some rebalancing going somewhere, or some debt being
There
settled
really is.
somewhere, isn't there? And I
Yes.
think
Yes.
technology is flushing it out. Personally, I think the power of the technology is getting to the truth quicker than a lot of people feel comfortable with, to be honest with you.
Oh, I hope so, because I think this is why there are these saber-rattling speeches and headlines saying, "We're going to war. We need to have a war. There's going to be a war. World War III is about to start." We're sending 3 billion a year apparently that we don't have to the Ukraine war, and there's various government people, particularly Keir Starmer, saying, "Got to be conscripted. You've got to be ready to go to war. We all need to." And it's just a distraction because they want to distract us from the horrendous economic situation that we're in. And I've certainly been saying to anyone and everyone, just say no. We do not need a war. We're not going to go to war, just to sacrifice ourselves for their economic mistakes. That's all it is. So just refuse. And I think that going forward this year, there will be more screaming headlines saying, "We got to go to war. Putin's doing terrible things." I mean, at the moment, Putin is the obvious one. If it stops working with Putin, they'll find another one. Maybe try and get us to have a war with Iran, like America is, and maybe Israel. I don't know who the next baddie is going to be, but maybe it'll be France v Germany, because Germany's now saying it's going to set up, arms manufacturers or whatever, which it never did before. So who knows? Who knows? But they're going to try and come up with an excuse for a stupid, useless, pointless, expensive war, just to keep our attention focused elsewhere than where it should be focused.
I think we can probably both agree that the economic chessboard of world is repeating itself, in that you will see, particularly certain stocks in the US suddenly get bolstered by huge orders that then
Yeah.
props up other areas that have maybe dropped down again. So it's just a big chessboard around the world, and because there is such interconnectivity. This is my opinion. Again, this is just me from looking back at history and where we are today. It's just a divvying up. It's like a bit like the Bretton Woods scenario again, 3.0. And I think it's happening, and it's happening fast. But I think from trying to look to try and get people engaged in this, to try and plan just as you suggest. And I think we're not going to be able to change the banks. They're there for 3 to 5 years.
No.
But we can provide alternatives, and I think from an alternative perspective, what would you say to somebody who's got 10 years to retire? They've only got 10 years. What do they do with their spare cash that they want to put to the best use now?
Yeah,
Only
good point.
only 10 years.
Again, I would
Yeah, only 10 years.
Only 10 years. I would spread it. I would put a decent amount, a really decent amount in commodities, particularly gold, probably silver, probably oil, be a mixture of ETFs and actually buying the physical stuff, maybe the miners. Um, those are the ones that I think have the juice power going forward. Also, I would put some in Bitcoin and maybe 1 or 2 other crypto. I mean, that's more volatile. It's a bit like silver, is very volatile. But I see the next 10 years, where personally, as far as I'm concerned, commodities are going to be where it's at. And anything that involves credit, cash, stocks and shares, certainly I would keep away from bonds unless they're really short dated bonds. Uh, they could just die, in the next 10 years. So I'd keep only small amounts in that. That's the way I'm thinking anyway.
I mean, obviously, you've got the de-dollarization debate ongoing at the moment, and BRICS was leading the way, which is a commodity-based type token exchange mechanism.
Yeah.
And then obviously, I think when Mr. Donald Trump came up with 75,000 Trump gold cards to give citizenship to every wealthy UAE family member,
Yes.
suddenly the dollar was back in vogue again. So where do you
Stunning,
where do you
right?
stand on the current BRICS opportunity? If do you think I'm on the fence personally whether the dollar will
Mm.
continue to reign or whether there will be another? I don't know.
It's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, again, I go back to gold. It seems quite a lot of commentators I speak to feel that whatever it is, whatever we move to, if it's not the dollar, then it's gonna have to be something gold backed. And I know that the BRICS countries they're all hoarding gold like there's no tomorrow. And they're discussing some sort of gold-backed digital coin anyway, digital, form of money, I think. But then what I'm also hearing is that we may be moving into a multipolar world where you don't have just the one overarching, king of the hill. So it's not going to be the yen, it's not even going to be necessarily a BRICS coin, but it could be that different countries will be dealing in their own currencies. It's already happening in parts of Africa and the Middle East. With the oil producers, they're talking to African countries about dealing in their own currency, which is a new concept for many um, global transactions. So you never know. We might end up with that, or it could be something that is gold backed, just because we're all sick of the dishonesty, essentially, of the fiat system, where anybody can print anything for as much as they like until it all goes pop.
Well, it leads me on to a very interesting conversation. Things I've been learning in these little islands of the Crown dependencies and the overseas territories. I think it was about 13 years ago, somebody in a little island called Alderney had proposed a gold sovereign with a Bitcoin in it, and it was on the front page of the FT, and it was blocked by the Royal Mint. And
Yeah.
that conversation has been asked again, and I've been asked to go and speak in Guernsey at a meeting in a month or two's time, because as I say, these overseas dependencies overseas territory dependencies, they have no central bank mechanism.
No,
So they haven't got the
that's
value of
good.
gold to maintain their economy. So what do you believe? Particularly, we've got the furore over the Vijayas. What do you think about crown dependencies in overseas territories in a monetary perspective?
Yes, so to be honest, crown dependencies are not something that I've thought about very much. I was just saying to somebody the other day that when the Falklands War happened, most people in Britain thought the Falklands, what's that? Where's that? It's in Scotland. We are quite blinded when it comes to the crown dependencies. My main sense is that it has a better tax regime, and you need to be rich to live there. That's those are basically what I think. But now you've told me that they're not allowed to print money. Well, good on them. And frankly, we ought to study how they're doing and learn from their example, because that's that's the only honest way to be, and that's the way we should be. That's the way we should be running things, where you're not allowed to print money. I mean, if we weren't allowed to print money, we wouldn't have the wars that we've had, and that we wouldn't have the wars that we will be having. Because that printing money enables wars. And that on its own, I think, is a good reason not to have honest money that is limited and backed by something solid like gold.
And I think obviously with the Crown dependencies being occupied during the Second World War, that those things are very much at the front of people's minds here of the self-security from an economic and many perspectives. I think the interesting thing for me is that around the world now, certain, I'm not saying people are building moats because it's a global economy, but there are certainly people searching out where's the best place to put my new money. You know, where's my money
Yes.
best living? And because you
Yes,
can
yes.
move it mobily, banks are
Mm.
basically at the moment in the UK blocking withdrawals. You know, they're
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, we've got this ridiculous system. I'm just trying to think of the word. I'll come up with it in a moment. But where they fractional reserve banking, where we you put money in and they lend it out and they lend it out and they lend it out and they lend it out, so that if we all went to the bank and said, "I'd like my cash, please," they'd only be able to give us 3 pence in the pound. That's all that's left, and they are. I think they're running scared because lots of people are wanting to move their money. People are gradually realizing that fiat currency is dying and that the banks are stealing from us and have been for a long time. So they're wanting to put it into gold, they're wanting to put it into Bitcoin, they're wanting to put it into other countries, and the banks are doing everything they can to block it. Hence, me having to fill in this stupid form for my business bank account, and the non-business ones going, "Ooh, what do you do? Where are you living? Who are you speaking to?" I mean, it's so invasive, and they have no right to do this, but I think it's because they're scared and they know that the more money that goes out, the quicker their own downfall will be.
I think this is why the growth of decentralization is occurring, and both from a media perspective and an economic perspective. And I suppose you could take me back to the comment I made earlier about tribes, and I don't want to describe them as that, but you're finding that you're having people who well, are just saying no, as you said, Jasmine. People are just
Mm,
saying
mm,
no
mm.
and looking for
Yeah.
additional um, channels of security, privacy. Um,
Yeah.
and I've been because I've been a TradFi guy since I was 16, so that's 38 years ago now. And I'm getting to the stage where the particularly with the CBDC, I've been anti
Yeah.
that since day one.
Yes.
I was
Me
I was
too.
I was part of some work on the omnibus account, and then when I discovered what was wanting to work on, I withdrew from the Bank of England working group on that, and so I think that's dead now. I don't think CBDC is a thing anymore, personally.
I hope so. I hope so, because I hear rumblings about it, but nobody wants it. Nobody. There's only a few sort of tech bros who go, "It's going to be great. It's going to be so easy." They're the only ones I've ever heard going that it was a good thing. I was on a panel at some event in London a few years ago, in which I explained that, as far as I'm concerned, it's the devil. They're all like, so Jasmine, what do you think about the CBDCs? It's the devil. That's what it is. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
I think it's once because we run the digital pound in Jersey and we pay interest because we work with BlackRock on that, which I don't know what your opinion is on them, but obviously they are controlling a lot of the world's debt.
Oh, no.
It's quite frightening the size of that. But
Yes.
again, the situation I see it at the moment is very much like it's going back in time. So in the north of England, every mill owner had his own currency.
Yeah,
You'd have a
yeah.
family Brocklehurst pound, the Smith
Ah,
pound. Yeah, so 100 years
that's
ago, yeah,
amazing.
the local in my hometown of Macclesfield, who unfortunately lost to Brentford, but we gave it a good fight. Um,
Good.
there will be, in my opinion, hundreds and hundreds of local stablecoins, all interoperable, and they
Yes,
won't be controlled by
yes.
one because you'll have thousands of
Yeah.
stablecoins. You'll have a Starbucks stablecoin. You'll have a
Yes, yes.
Amazon stablecoin, and they'll
Mhm,
all be
mhm.
interoperable. And then that gives a bit of power back to the people because as long as they can
That's good.
settle and
Yeah.
buy local goods, that then puts that power back into the people. In my humble opinion, anyway.
Well, I think you're right, and certainly in America, I mean, I've heard all sorts of rumblings about, Trump setting up a US stablecoin, that would be run by the government. So, not Tether. Maybe they take over Tether or something like that. But it does feel like stablecoins are the way forward. I mean, in China, they're setting up their own stablecoins. Apparently 96% of stablecoins are dollar ones, but that's for the moment. Why not have anybody could have a stablecoin, sounds to me.
Well, I think all of China settle daily 1 billion transactions peer to peer with no bank. It's
Ah,
Alipay and WeChat. So that sort of peer to peer, which is one to
mm,
one, is
yeah,
successful there. And I think
good.
what's going to happen is because I think particularly the US is an archaic banking system.
Oh, very
It's
much
easier
so,
for them to
yes.
start and adopt this. And what they've
Mm,
done is they've underwritten maybe some errors of the past. So we're going out to New
mhm.
York in a couple of weeks' time because there's a US government approved bank now launched called, I think it's
Mhm,
Anchorage, I
mhm.
think it is, and that we will be banking with them because they'll allow
Yes.
global trade to occur in stablecoins in a decentralized manner.
Wow.
So it's
Yes.
freedom for people to then live their life in a preferred currency to their inflation ravaged one. So the
Mm,
US are leading on this now. And it'll
yeah.
be interesting to see how it plays out because the big banks are trying to lobby to stop this freedom happening. So it'll be an interesting
Yes,
one. So
yes,
for me, bricks and mortar, gold, digital assets, and a settlement rail that everybody can use. But I
yes.
think again, this is not financial advice or anything. This is just my opinion because I'm conscious that there are a lot of people who want to say things but are scared to do so. Jasmine, as well.
Yeah,
Um,
not me.
Now I know, which is wonderful to speak to you on this basis. But I think from having your honesty and openness will hopefully make people think and to do some
I hope
research,
so.
do look around, do think
Yes.
about, is my money best in that bank? Do think about
Mhm,
the
mhm.
alternatives. Do think about other countries as well, because it's not all UK. And I think
No,
that
true.
the new money order, which is why we're doing the podcast, is about freedom and mobility.
Mm,
And
mm.
we've got to fight for that. And I think the UK is quite a way behind, unfortunately, which is why
Yes,
we're in
we are.
Jersey, because they need this new money order because they
Yes, of
can't print
course,
money for the
yes.
next 10 years.
Good for them. Good for them. Well, it's like any discipline is hard, but it's good for you. So we in this country, if we had the discipline of not being able to print money, oh, we'd have a totally different society. Really, it would, and a better one, I consider, a more disciplined, healthier one, with more realistic views of everything, and probably looking after each other more. That's the way I feel, rather than expecting the government to do it all.
Well,
Mhm.
next opportunity you get, jump on one of those big orange buses, get yourself over to
Yes.
Jersey, and I'll return the compliment with a nice drink and a bite to eat for you.
Great. Thank you. That'd be lovely,
Real
Lee.
pleasure. Thanks, Jasmine.
Thanks, Lee.